Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasce. Today is another AMA episode, that is, Ask Me Anything. I love to answer your questions, and if you have a question you think is going to be of broad interest, send it in. I'll answer it live on the air. Send your questions to victor@victorjm.com. That's victor@victorjm.com. Today's question comes from Adam, who writes, "Hello, Victor. Thank you for the wonderful podcast. I'm a daily listener, and I regularly recommend the Real Estate Espresso Podcast to others. Today, you ended your podcast, Season 6, Episode 166, Can the Bank Survive Another Rate Increase? With the words, before it all comes crashing down. I know many, like me, are wondering what this crash will look like in our own sectors of real estate. But I also know you're not big on making predictions. That being said, when you say before it all comes crashing down, what does that mean for us as real estate investors? Which asset classes do you think will be impacted the most? Thank you and have an awesome day." Well, Adam, thanks for the kind words, and this is a great question. A lot of people, including myself, are asking that question. But here's what I think it means when I say that things will all come crashing down. There will be a large number of defaults in commercial real estate along the way. That's expected. When a large asset goes into foreclosure, the underlying paper will take a hit, but the building still remains standing, and ultimately the asset may go on to thrive and live another day and see a bright future. There's many examples of that. Think of the Empire State Building or the Chrysler Building in New York City. These iconic buildings were built in the late 1920s and completed just as the Great Depression hit. We've already seen the start of this in commercial office and in hospitality. The 3,000 hotel rooms at the San Francisco Hilton and the Park 55 hotels signaled that they are going to be handing their keys back to the lender in the near future. But it's not only this hotel. The Huntington Hotel, which is in the city's prestigious Nob Hill area, also went to foreclosure, along with Westfield. There's more to come. The banks that hold the paper will experience significant losses, which will negatively impact bank reserves and bank liquidity. For all the reasons we discussed in yesterday's show, the banks will have a declining ability to lend as a result of falling liquidity. If banking trouble is similar in scale to what we've seen so far this year, then the Fed will ultimately backstop the banking system and prevent it from failing. But if the U.S. government needs to really step in to stop the entire banking system from falling apart altogether, it will do whatever it takes to restore confidence in the banking system, even if it means printing a virtually unlimited amount of money and putting those reserves on the Fed's balance sheet. But if it gets really bad, ultimately the crisis is going to be used to wrestle control of the banking system away from those independent banks in the name of safety. The individual banks can't be trusted, after all, with your funds, but instead you can trust the U.S. government. All of the plumbing in the financial system is being prepared to make the transition to a central bank digital currency, and I believe it's going to take a convincing crisis to cause a reset to the financial system. And these are not without precedent. We can think of the Western economies as operating under the rule of law and of maintaining strong property rights. But let's look back through the past century. Remember, it was illegal for ordinary citizens to own gold after May 1st, 1933. Executive Order 6102 required all persons to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all of the gold to the Federal Reserve in exchange for $20.67 per troy ounce. And shortly after the United States took possession of all the Americans' gold in mass quantities, the Gold Reserve Act was passed, which instantly raised the value of gold from just over $20 to $35 an ounce. But we've seen it in other countries too. India outlawed their 500 rupee and 1,000 rupee notes in May of 2016. The Indian government demonetized these banknotes on two prior occasions, once in 1946 and once again in 1978. In all of these cases, the goal was to combat tax evasion via black money that was held outside the formal economy. The U.S. has also reset its financial system back in 1965 when they eliminated silver from coins in favor of nickel. Then in 1968, the U.S. dollar was no longer a silver certificate, redeemable to the bearer on demand for 1 ounce of silver. And then again in 1971, Richard Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard, and the U.S. dollar officially became a fiat currency and has been ever since. In each of these cases, ordinary citizens hardly noticed. They still bought their groceries, they still put fuel in their car. They never really read what it said on the front of the dollar bill anyway. The population was compliant and they didn't revolt. In fact, it's actually surprising that under Executive Order 6102 back in 1933, confiscating all of the gold in the country did not result in a revolt. It's going to take a crisis, and people will gradually surrender more privacy and more civil rights and more property rights to the government. The change in regulations and currency will be under the guise of protecting people in a crisis. The biggest issue in the meantime will be the lack of liquidity, which is going to make it difficult to access the credit markets for a period of time. Will there be bigger fallout, including falling asset prices or collapse of certain markets? It's too hard to say at this point. I want to thank you, Adam, for a fabulous question. And for the listeners at home, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.